Welcome to Infinite Universe with interesting episode. Christopher Wallace, better known as the Notorious B.I.G. or Biggie Smalls, was not only a giant in the hip-hop world but also someone whose influence extended far beyond music. After his sudden death in 1997, fans believed his family, particularly his mother Valetta Wallace, had protected his legacy with care. But what investigators recently found told a very different and far more disturbing story. It wasn't just about unreleased tracks or old music contracts. Instead, it exposed years of secrecy, betrayal, and control that had slowly moved into the hands of people outside the Wallace family. After Valetta Wallace passed away peacefully in March 2025 at the age of 78, the last direct family connection to Biggie's legacy was gone. People assumed that she had managed her son's estate with fierce dedication until her final days. But just weeks later, the music industry and fans were stunned by the announcement that Biggie's entire music catalog had been sold. This wasn't a small licensing agreement or a handful of tracks. It was everything: his master recordings, publishing rights, branding control, and even rights to his name and image. The buyer was Primary Wave, a large and aggressive music investment company known for acquiring rights to famous music catalogs. The deal was estimated to be worth between $100 million and $150 million. But the real shock wasn't the amount. It was the speed and timing. There was no public statement from Valetta before her death, and the negotiations were reported to have been going on behind closed doors long before she passed. This raised serious questions. Had Valetta really agreed to this sale? Or was she pushed out of decision-making as her health declined? The truth started to come out when Primary Wave took over and gained access to something very few even knew existed: a sealed vault. This vault had been locked away since the early 2000s, hidden in a climate-controlled basement below an unmarked office building. Inside were not only music tapes and memorabilia, but documents and records that painted a troubling picture. There were handwritten lyrics, demo recordings, financial statements, and even personal journals. These items revealed Biggie's thoughts about fame, his family, and the dangers he faced during his career. There were also master tapes of unreleased songs and alternate versions of famous tracks, along with rare collaborations that never saw the light of day. But even more shocking were the contents of a locked cabinet bolted to the floor. Inside were faded manila envelopes marked internal use only. These documents had been intentionally kept separate from the music archives. What these documents showed was that, beginning shortly after Biggie's death, the control of his estate was slowly taken away from the family. Two music industry figures, Wayne Barrow and Mark Pitts, became key decision-makers. They were not family members but were given broad powers to manage the estate's finances, licensing, branding, and unreleased content. Over time, their control grew stronger and more private. Many believed Valetta still had final say, but these papers told a different story. Behind the scenes, legal arrangements were being made to transfer Biggie's rights to third parties. Contracts were drawn up that gave Barrow, Pitts, and related business entities long-term control. These legal documents were official and appeared valid, but they were never shared with the public or even with some members of Biggie's own family. Licensing deals were signed with broad and vague terms, granting others the ability to use Biggie's name, image, and music without needing family approval. No press announcements, no audits, and no transparency had ever exposed this. The documents remained hidden for over 2 decades, protected in a vault that only now had been opened. All the while, the public was led to believe that Biggie's family was fully in charge. Fans who thought his legacy was in trusted hands now saw that most of the decision-making had been shifted elsewhere years ago. Perhaps most disturbing was what some insiders claimed they found at the very back of the locked cabinet. There were references to a missing clause from Biggie's will, a codicil that might have changed who had the ultimate authority over his estate. This clause was never confirmed officially, but its rumored existence suggested that someone may have tampered with or withheld part of his original wishes. As all this information surfaced, fans, journalists, and even people within the music industry started asking hard questions. Why was the sale of Biggie's catalog done so quietly? Why wasn't Valetta Wallace's voice heard before it happened? And what did this all mean for the future of Biggie's music and memory? The answers have not been clear. The estate has remained silent, and the new owners at Primary Wave have only confirmed the purchase without addressing the controversy. But what is clear now is that the story fans believed for so long was not the full truth. The idea that Biggie's legacy was kept within the family and preserved with integrity has been deeply shaken. Instead, the reality was far more complicated, involving hidden power moves, corporate interests, and legal strategies that played out far from public view. The Notorious B.I.G. gave the world some of the most honest and powerful music ever recorded. His lyrics told the truth about his life and his environment. Ironically, after his death, the story of his own legacy became one filled with secrets and silence. Now that the vault has been opened and the documents revealed, fans are left wondering what else has been hidden from them and who really controls the voice of Biggie Smalls today. If the amendment was real, it would have handed complete control of Biggie's estate and creative rights to his children after his mother, Voletta Wallace, passed away. The original will had been very clear and organized, giving specific things like music rights and personal belongings to people named in the document. It was supposed to protect Biggie's family and keep his legacy in the hands of those he trusted. But that plan may have been changed silently. If there was a second version of the will, it disappeared. There was no signed copy, no witnesses to confirm it, just references in letters and emails saying it might have existed and then vanished. No one knows if it was lost, hidden, or destroyed on purpose. But without it, a big legal and emotional gap was left behind. When people finally looked into the matter, court records showed a different version of the will had been filed. At first, it looked similar to the original, but closer inspection revealed some major changes. Items and rights that were clearly assigned in the original were now vaguely mentioned or completely missing. People who were meant to inherit parts of the estate had been replaced by unnamed companies or unknown managers. The biggest surprise was how much power was given to people outside the family, strangers with no personal connection to Biggie. They now had control over his music, money, and image. The signature on this version of the will became another issue. Experts who studied the handwriting found strange differences. The way the pen was used, the shape of the letters, and the overall writing style didn't match Biggie's known signature. At least one version might have been forged, with someone faking his signature to push through new plans. If that's true, it would mean Biggie's last wishes were changed, possibly erased, and his entire legacy was redirected to benefit people he never chose. The situation only became more troubling when investigators followed the money. After Biggie's death, the value of his estate grew enormously. It started at about $10 million and went all the way up to $160 million. Everyone thought Voletta Wallace was managing things carefully, protecting her son's image and music. But when financial experts reviewed the records in 2025, they found something shocking. Hidden behind the scenes was a network of shell companies, fake businesses created to move money around without anyone knowing where it ended up. These companies were set up in countries where it's hard to track finances. They collected money from all kinds of sources: music rights, merchandise, films, and unreleased songs. But when the investigators followed these payments, the trail often stopped. Very little of the money ever made it to Biggie's children or into accounts set up for the family. Most of the profits went into unknown bank accounts and were paid to companies and people listed only by initials. Some of these names were linked to people who had once worked closely with Biggie or managed his estate. Between 2010 and 2020, tens of millions of dollars disappeared into these hidden accounts. When people asked for answers, they got silence. No proper audits were shared, and there didn't seem to be any systems in place to make sure everything was done right. The more people looked into it, the clearer it became that the huge rise in the estate's value might have been just a story created to cover up bad management or something worse. The missing money wasn't just about dollars, it was about trust. Biggie's family, and the fans who loved his music, had been let down. This moment changed everything. It exposed the people who had been secretly in control and forced everyone to rethink how Biggie's legacy was being handled. As the audit continued, another mystery came to light: missing songs. Fans and music insiders had always whispered about unreleased music, including full songs that Biggie had recorded but never shared. A carefully kept list made years ago named more than 40 of these tracks. These weren't just scraps or rough drafts, they were completed songs that many believed showed Biggie at his most creative. But when the archive was checked in 2025, most of them were gone. The tapes weren't there. Important pieces of hip-hop history had vanished. One particular hard drive was said to contain video footage and recordings from the time Biggie worked on his legendary Life After Death album. It could have revealed his thoughts and creative style during those final moments of his career. But when experts tried to open it, they found it had been completely wiped clean. Not just deleted, but destroyed using high-level software normally used by governments to erase top-secret information. This wasn't an accident or a technical glitch. Someone had gone out of their way to erase Biggie's digital past. No one knows what they were trying to hide. This raised the question, why would anyone want to get rid of Biggie's work? What was on those tapes that someone didn't want the world to hear or see? It seemed like someone had been trying to rewrite Biggie's story by removing parts that didn't fit a certain image. Instead of celebrating everything he created, someone had decided to control what could be released and what would be buried forever. Then came the sale of the estate. A company called Primary Wave bought the rights to Biggie's music, name, and image. On the outside, it looked like a regular deal meant to protect and promote Biggie's work. The company promised to keep his legacy alive and bring his music to new fans. But when legal documents were leaked, they showed something far more serious. This wasn't just about music. Hidden in the contract were special rights. The company had permission to use Biggie's voice in new AI-generated songs and to create digital holograms of him performing. Even more troubling, Biggie's family hadn't been asked for their opinion. His children weren't part of the talks. They weren't even told about these new projects. And the money from these deals? It wasn't going to the family. Instead, it was being used to pay back investors, big companies, and wealthy people who had helped fund the sale. So, while fans thought Biggie's name was being honored, his image was actually being turned into a product. A brand. A business. One that no longer had anything to do with the man himself. For those closest to Biggie, it felt like betrayal. The sale didn't protect his memory. It erased his personal story and turned him into a tool for making money. What looked like a tribute was actually a carefully planned way to make profit, with almost no care for his family or his wishes. But perhaps the most heartbreaking discovery was found in a small box that had been forgotten in a corner of the storage vault. Inside was a single piece of paper. It was old, yellowed with age, and written by hand. The signature was real. It belonged to Biggie. The paper was a list of people he didn't trust. People he wanted out of his business affairs. People he believed would take advantage of him if he was gone. And shockingly, many of those names were now the same people who had gained control of his estate. This list had been ignored. Maybe even hidden on purpose. Biggie had warned everyone, but no one listened. His voice was powerful when he was alive, but in death, it had been silenced not by violence this time, but by contracts, by silence, and by greed. For nearly 30 years, the truth had been buried. But this one document changed everything. It showed that Biggie had tried to protect himself and his family, but others had ignored his wishes and taken control anyway. Now in 2025, that silence is broken. The truth is coming out. Fans who believed his legacy was being preserved are learning it was sold off piece by piece. His unreleased music is missing. His children haven't received what was promised. And his name is being used for projects he never agreed to. This isn't just about music. It's about how a man's memory was taken and turned into a business. Christopher Wallace, known as Biggie Smalls, left behind more than music. He left behind a warning, one that was ignored until now. And the story of what happened to his legacy is far worse than anyone imagined. Thanks for watching. Keep it and stay tuned. Like and subscribe our channel. Have a good day.